looking rather snazzy and very still. Morning, Andrew. Big congratulations on actually doing the homework assignment. So, yay. That's Steve, Edward, Harold, and Bill. Awesome.
Don't have a true hole. Where I gonna put that?
We'll give everyone a minute to come join us here before we get started.
It's kind of funny. My system doesn't ever open up. It says wait for host to open meeting. And I wait and I wait and nothing happens. So then I close out and I open it again and you're already 3 people here already. It's kind of interesting.
Funny how that works, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost every time, if not every time. It's kind of weird. Anyway, happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holiday. I'm in Taiwan right now. It's 2 a.m. Sunday morning.
Oh.
To visit, with my daughter. Come back for. I'm staying in my relative home right now.
Grace is at a library right now trying to figure out her headphones. I think she's NLPAR. There she is.
And I'll encourage everyone to submit pictures for the AI Facebook homepage. Otherwise, Edward's going to win. So if you guys all want to look at a picture of Edward for the next year, do nothing.
Hey.
I got a picture of me in my tuxedo last New Year's Eve. That, it's a close-up. That'd be fun.
Then we'd have a choice between the lesser of two evils, even better.
Yeah. I got to get my wife to send that to me. It's on her phone, though.
I was thinking something like a waterfall or a rainbow or...
Oh, I thought you meant a picture of us.
Children's playing. I was thinking of the picture for the homepage.
Oh, I misunderstood. Sorry. Picture for the homepage.
There's been one submission so far, so if there's just one, that one wins.
I've got some nice photos. I'll look through them.
All right, awesome. All right, let's start with a few minutes in the zone. No, we don't want 5 hours. As much fun as that might be, I'm afraid my bladder wouldn't survive 5 hours of beaming. All right, here we go.
If we went that long, we might really beam somewhere.
All right. Well then, happy Saturday. Happy New Year. Unless you're in China, in which case, Happy New Year, I think, happens next month. So happy almost New Year to Edward and everyone else in that part of the world. You guys always surprise me with the group size. I figured today would be a small one, given vacation, people returning to work and all that. But there's a lot of us, so that's awesome. Other times I expect a big group, and there's like 4 people here. So what do I know, right? So I wanted to, I picked this very short article. I thought that nobody wanted to read something long over the holidays. And if you did, I hope you read Spiral Dynamics. Anybody read Spiral Dynamics over the holidays? Anybody? Ah, okay.
Right.
Just figured I'd ask. I figured you wouldn't. That's all right. And the title, of course, is "The Story Is Not the Enemy." And I want to make just a few broad points first, and then we'll go through the article. And would love to hear all your thoughts, shares, opinions on this. This is there's a lot of misconceptions in the New Age world. There's a lot of stuff they get right, and there's a lot of stuff they get wrong. That's true of everything, right? Carl sort of broadly termed it the New Age myth. And there's different pieces to it. One of the biggest and most obvious pieces is this idea that somehow magically everything in your life can be good and positive because you say mantras or pray to the right statue or wear the right yoga pants or something. Well, that's a little silly, right? Life is never going to be all positive or all good. That is almost by definition impossible, by the nature of the polarity, the opposites, the Tao. There's always going to be good and bad. So that's one of the big ones. So watch out for that. Not our subject today, but watch out for that. That we judge ourselves based on a false ideal. We're comparing our real lives to something that's abstract and theoretical. And when you do that, you're going to fail. You're going to lose. Of course you will. It's not too much different than young men and women having a huge crisis of self-esteem because they compare their bodies to a photoshopped model. The point being that the body you see in the picture is not real. It does not exist. It was created inside a computer. That person does not look that way. But you can see how comparing yourself to something that's not real, an unobtainable idea, can cause a lot of frustration. So that's part of it. Another part of it is this idea that all belief systems or stories or blocks are somehow bad. And a lot of us go through a phase when we're learning this work that we just want to go, oh, just clear everything. I just want to be as clear as possible. Just clear everything. And that's a very simplistic understanding. It doesn't work that way. There has to be story. There has to be code. You can't just clear everything for some obvious reasons. For one, if you somehow manage to clear everything, you would cease to exist. You couldn't hold physical form. Being physical requires a certain complex of mythology and story just to hold your physical form. So you'd poof. From another perspective, some of you may remember from the level 2, the Quantum Master Healer, that there's a whole section about energy and beliefs and healings. That, remember, the gist of it was, don't take away all of anything from anyone. So you don't want to take all of someone's anger away. You don't want to take all of someone's fear away. You don't want to take all of someone's anxiety away. Why is that? Why is it you don't want to take all of everything away from someone? I'm waiting for you guys.
A certain level of anger is good because
Exactly.
it makes you take action, etc.
That's exactly right.
Fear, you have to have fear or you drive too fast or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, that all these so-called negative things actually have positive and important benefits and purposes.
Yeah, you just don't want to be trapped by them and have them as a trigger stimulus for, you want to be able to use your cognitive thought more than just be reacting all the time.
So that's exactly right. So there may be certain things that trigger anger in us, and that anger is a problem, that we can get into clear release work with. There may be certain things that trigger too much fear, too much anxiety. Absolutely, we can work with that. But we don't want to take away all of anything, because everything has an important purpose and role. And if we look at microorganisms, it's the same. You don't want to kill all the viruses in your body. You don't want to kill all the bacteria. You don't want to kill all the parasites. And there's similar reasons. They all have important purposes. It's just when something is going way beyond its purpose and causing a problem, then you need to intervene. And that's what the healing is for, right? That's why we do digging and movement and meditation and all these, millions of different modalities and processes. So the idea that, just clear everything, I think that's a very, let's just say we'll call that a rookie mistake. That isn't how life works. One thing that Kara would often say was that it's not about getting rid of all your stories and myths. It's really about evolving them to be more functional to support you in your life. And so it's just like code. Sometimes code works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a bit arbitrary, isn't it? All depends on what you're looking to use it for. If you're looking to play a game and your email agent fires up, well then, that's not the right code, is it? It's not that the game playing code is bad or wrong, or that your email code is bad or wrong. It's just not what you're looking for at that moment. If I need to get across town, I'm probably not going to take an 18-wheeler. I could, but it's going to be a lot more difficult, isn't it? That's a lot harder to drive. Right turns are a bitch. Good luck parking an 18-wheeler, right? They're probably better off with a passenger car. So that's kind of how I would encourage everyone to look at all these myths and stories and beliefs and codes we're working with. It's not a race to the finish to get rid of them. It's simply a matter of examining what's serving you and supporting you based on where you are and where you want to go and what's causing a problem. So you see the parallel to anger and fear and bacteria, right? One thing that is increasingly obvious the more we study the natural world is that there is very little waste in nature. Nature is incredibly efficient. That if you look at like the appendix or the tonsils, I remember when I was a kid, they taught us that they had no purpose. You just take them out. Now we're discovering, oh my gosh, they actually do something. Maybe we shouldn't just cut it out unless it's a real problem, right? So that's how I would look at all these myths. Don't go rushing to cut them out unless you see that it's causing a problem or that it can be evolved, reconfigured into something more functional that works better for you.
Yeah, I was looking at archetypes not long ago and trying to figure out where I was and all this and all that. But in the readings I was doing, it says essentially, any of the archetypes aren't necessarily bad archetypes.
That's right.
There's parts of them that are functional, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Even so-called negative ones like the victim. There are many circumstances and contexts in life where being a victim might actually be functional. And you have to stretch a little bit to find them, but they're out there. So most important thing, just recognize that having stories, myths, code, beliefs, etc., is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's the only reason we're here. It's just a matter of if there's certain myths or stories that are causing a problem for you that aren't relevant to where you are, where you want to go, then maybe we should let them go, swap them out for something that is more functional. So looking at the article, so starts off with your personal myths are an ally. And remember that all these myths we carry, all these belief systems, stories inside of us have been evolved by us over all these lifetimes and generations to be what we think is the optimal set of code in each moment based on the beliefs of the subconscious. Doesn't mean it's right. It just means that's what we think it is, right? Because after all, don't we behave in what we think is the most appropriate way in each moment? Of course we do. One of my favorite lines out of Conversations with God was, when Neil channels that everything everybody does, in the moment they do it, they think is the right thing. And that's because it's a product of all these myths and stories, right? All your code, all your beliefs tells you that this is the right thing. So that they're our allies. And of course, we love stories. We communicate with stories. We pass on stories. There's all sorts of great work on the importance of mythology as sort of the internal compass, both for our individual lives and as a society. Anybody read any of Joseph Campbell's work, The Hero with a Thousand Faces? Cool. Gone through the, there was a wonderful PBS series, The Power of Myth.
Yeah, with Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, really good stuff. I think you would all enjoy it. It's kind of funny. Before I watched it, my aunt bought it for me back in the 90s. I think it came out early 90s, something like that. I forget.
Mm-hmm.
And she had bought me the box set. And I didn't watch it right away. It sat on the shelf for a while because I'm like, oh, cool. You know, it's a documentary about a bunch of cool old stories about Zeus and Odin, right? And it's like, no, it's about life. It's about how life works, how we behave. So this is really important stuff. And we humans are storytelling machines. So that's a really important part of our journey. So don't see the story as the enemy. It's not. It can be, but it's not inherently. And they are, of course, deeply valuable to us. One of the things that I've seen people say, it's kind of unfortunate from Brent's perspective, but I've literally had people say, don't try to make me change anything I believe. I've even had people who were very sick say, I would rather die than change my beliefs. So this is how powerful these stories are to us. And again, no right or wrong. I would encourage everyone to look at through the prism of functional or not functional. Does it help you get to where you want to go, or does it get in the way? As an example, our religious stories are some of the ones that we cherish the most. There are many people in this world who would literally rather die than change their religious beliefs. Why is that? Well, part of it is every religion celebrates people that have died rather than change their beliefs. It's built into the culture. Those are the stories you hear. The obvious example would be the Christian martyrs. When the Roman Empire really cracked down on Christianity, there were many famous martyrs who went to their death rather than make a sacrifice to Zeus or Jupiter, as the Romans called him. It's just a little side note, that's one of the misunderstandings of history. The Romans were actually very tolerant of all these different religions and faiths, as long as you came and made your sacrifice to Jupiter once a year, paid your lip service to the Roman gods. That was more or less how it went. So, you show up, you kiss the statue, burn some incense, whatever they did back in those days, and you were good for a year. Go worship whoever you want. The Christians became martyrs because they had the specific prohibition against worshiping other gods or graven images or such. So the hardcore ones refused, and they were killed. And they were venerated as great heroes within that culture. And we still have that today. We see it obviously in the Muslim world. The extremists who were blowing themselves up and slaughtering innocent people, and then are celebrated as heroes. So when you look at it from that angle, you kind of get how, yeah, these stories really run deep. They are really important to us. But of course, it goes beyond religion. Politics is our beliefs in action. There are many of us, probably more of us, that would die for our political beliefs than for our religious beliefs. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just to give you a sense of how important this is, right? They shape our identity. Beyond the societal stuff, we all have really important internal beliefs about ourselves and the world. That is, you may remember from a couple sessions ago, the personal mythological structure. Always a good one. That's one of those articles, you just can't read it too many times. So much good stuff in there. That's your personal mythological struggle. And we would rather suffer and die than challenge or examine or let go of some of those beliefs. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of that. I'm just saying that's very common. Obviously, we're a self-selected group here. We're more willing than most to try to turn on that objective observer to see the truth of what's going on, and to be willing to let go of that which is not functional, even if it is a dear story to us. I mean, because let's face it, there's a lot of comfort in these stories, isn't there? I don't mean to pick on Christianity, but I will pick on it a little bit just because it's the religion most of us are most familiar with. I grew up in a Christian household. Many of us did. And there's some comfort believing that as long as you repent before it's too late, that you'll be forgiven and get to spend eternity in heaven. That's comforting, isn't it? I think so. And there's comforting beliefs and aspects of all these belief systems. So just understand that we're up against something really strong here. And logic and reason often fail. And I actually had a client once tell me to my face, Brent, you can do anything you want to my body, but don't try to talk to me about what I believe or change my opinion on anything. So who thinks that person was a great fit? And I went on to do 50 sessions with them. Anybody?
I bet that was the end of it, pretty much.
Who thinks they got fired? Yeah. Yeah, they got fired. It was a situation where someone had dragged in their elderly parent who didn't want to be there. Someone dragged in their 80-year-old mom who had a whole host of different issues going on, as many elderly people do. And she's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. But her attitude was, you can do anything you want to my body. She had surgeries, taken all these drugs. So, I mean, horrible damage from other surgeries and drugs and medical treatment, right? But don't you dare try to talk to me or ask me questions or make me change what I believe. So that's just what we're up against, right? Powerful stuff.
Yeah. Brent, I've got a Star Trek
yeah,
story.
please, Edward. I would love to hear from everyone, and I would love it even more if it's about Star Trek. So please go ahead.
This is from DS9.
My favorite. My favorite Star Trek.
One of my favorite, but this is where in the beginning, the lead character, Captain Sisko, he's a captain of a ship that's destroyed by the Borg, and Jean-Luc Picard he's Locutus of the Borg, and then his wife is killed, and then he has to raise his young son by himself. So fast forward, he gets an assignment in DS9, and as part of being there, they have a wormhole to another dimension of the galaxy. And his first trip in there, he has this out-of-body experience of meeting what the local people call the prophets. And he's shifted into a higher dimension. And so he's in timeless time, and he's reliving that event where the Starfleet was destroyed, and his wife was killed. And it's like this endless loop. And he's sitting there, and the higher dimensional beings take on shapes of people that he remembers. And he's saying, why are you doing this to me? Because he's grieving, he's mourning the loss of his wife and the destruction of a lot of his friends. Mm-hmm. And he's going, why are you torturing me like this? Why are you torturing me? And they go, we're not torturing you. You choose to live here. You choose to live in this. And he goes, I don't understand. And they go, he doesn't understand. And this goes on and on and on until finally they keep saying, you choose to live here. You choose to live in your past. And then he pauses on a moment and reflects. And as he starts to get it, you see he has this epiphany that he's still grieving, he's still mourning, he's still angry, he's still resentful because of the loss of life of his wife. And but he gets it. So when he now comes back into his body, he has that moment of clarity. And he goes on and heals his relationship with his son and becomes a loving father. But no time had passed, basically, when he came back into his body. And so this fits in where you talk about disengaging from our story. Well, it was an unconscious.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The mourning, the grief, and the anger. But once he had that out-of-body experience and he realized it was a choice. an unconscious choice to live there and hold all that anger, resentment, and frustration. So,
No, it's a wonderful share. Thank you, Edward.
yeah.
First of all, frickin' love Deep Space Nine. It is my second all-time favorite sci-fi show, only after Babylon 5.
Yeah.
And great spiritual themes. For those of you that are interested, I would highly recommend it. It's an amazing journey. I'll caution you, it starts a little slow. It really hits its stride in season 3 when Worf rejoins the cast. But amazing story. Just a funny historical note. Did you know that J. Michael Straczynski, who pitched Babylon 5 to Paramount, they said no, and they turned around and made Deep Space Nine. They stole his idea. He sued them and successfully, which is pretty unusual. I step back and go, I'm okay with that, because we got 2 amazing sci-fi shows out of it instead of 1. So I'm okay with how it worked out, right? But that's it's a wonderful thing Edward just shared, because what happened was when Sisko, the emissary, was taken into that higher dimension, that was metaphorical to us turning on the observer, looking at our lives from an objective perspective. Right, that's what we'll try to do. That's why we record sometimes the movements on video, and Andrew submitted one we'll look at today. I'm really glad to have a video to look at, because it's a different angle into the movement. So when we can objectively see what's really going on with our lives, we go, oh crap, this is what's going on. And like Edward said, with the character, that this is such a powerful insight into what shapes and drives our lives. So many of us are living in the past. I actually made my first reaction video for my new music channel, and one of the lines I talked about was the power of what has been before rises to trap you within. And that's what it's all about, right? What has been before creates our beliefs that then perpetuate and keep us stuck. There's to share a little Zen story. This is one of those eternal truths about being human, right? This is why we still read Plato and Shakespeare and things hundreds of thousands of years later. There's certain eternal aspects to humanity that don't change very much. There's a Zen story about 2 Buddhist monks, and they were of a rather, shall we say, very strict order, where they were not allowed to touch or interact with anybody outside their order. So they weren't allowed to talk to them, have interactions in any way. And the 2 of them were on a journey from one monastery to another. And they found a woman with a young child struggling to get across to ford a river. And one of the monks went and helped her and carried her across, and her child, and put her down, and they kept walking. And about an hour later, the other monk says to him, I thought we weren't supposed to interact with anybody outside the order. And the older monk said, the one who carried the woman, smiled and said, I put her down over an hour ago. Why are you still carrying her? So the point being that sometimes things happen that we don't like, that are negative or bad, that we wouldn't choose consciously. It happens, but we don't want to get stuck in it. So, sometimes you have to go outside your vows. If there's a woman and a baby that are about to drown, okay. You go help them across the river, and then you put it down. You don't carry it with you. And that's ideally what we're trying to do here with our work. That all the things that have happened to you and your parents in your past lives, I'm not saying it's not real. It is absolutely real. It was real, but it's not now. So we want to let go of that. And I had I don't want to make this too much about Brent, but I had a great realization the other day. I had asked one of my buddies, we're working on a webinar and coaching script, online business, self-improvement stuff, right? And I said, well, what do I have to do to get to this goal? And basically he said, Brent, you just have to be the person that believes that this is appropriate and right for you to have. I'm like, oh man, I was hoping you'd tell me I have to go to a mastermind or read a book or write an essay. That I can do, right? But to genuinely believe and know that you're successful and powerful and wonderful and worthy and all that, And I can look back to points in my life and go, yeah, I actually used to believe that a long time ago, but then shit happened and I lost it. And that's true of all of us, isn't it? How many of you really believed in yourself when you were very young, when you were 2, 3, 4 years old? I did. I'd love to see everyone's hand. You know, if you didn't, that's okay. I'm not trying to shame anyone, but that's normal, right? And then stuff happens. And the question is, how are we going to relate to it? To tie this back to some of the things we've talked about before, life isn't so much about what happens to you. It's about how you react to it. It's about what you do about it. Because none of us can really control what happens to us. We can influence it to some degree, but we can't control it. So it's not about what happens. You really shouldn't judge people based on what happens to them. If we're going to judge them, it should be based on how they're going to relate to it. What are you going to do about it? There's been an age-old debate among historians about if we look at, say, the greatest presidents, is it something inherent in their attributes, their character that made them great? Or was it all the crap they had to deal with? And of course, there's a little of both. Andrew, please go ahead.
Two thoughts. This is really, the other day I got a text message from a friend that said, we can't always choose the music life plays for us, but we can choose how we dance to it.
There you go.
And then the second piece, when you're mentioning presidents, I think, what was it, Abraham Lincoln, if my memory is correct, I read an article said he failed 8 different times, failed in business, lost his love of his life, ran for legislature, just struggled, fought depression, and then he ended up
he lost it. He lost way more elections than he ever won.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the guy was a mess. General Grant, too. The guy was a total loser, for those of you that don't follow history. He had been thrown out of the army. He was an alcoholic. He had a broken family. He couldn't hold a job. You know, he started a company and went bankrupt 2 or 3 times. I mean, the guy was a mess. And then the Civil War started, and he really found himself and his place in the world, and is now considered one of the greatest military heroes in American history. Of course, your opinion may vary, especially if your family's from the South, but generally, yeah, Harold, yeah. I have mixed feelings. My mother's side of the family is from New England. My father's side of the family is from the South. So I'm very conflicted when it comes to the Civil War. I want to just go beat myself up a little bit. But the point being that most historians come to the conclusion that presidents can only be as great as the crises facing them allow them to become. And so you'll see how this is related to your personal lives. That who are the ones we consider the greatest presidents? Well, most people will put Abraham Lincoln either at number 1, number 2, number 3. George Washington, similar. FDR. Maybe Woodrow Wilson. What is it that all those presidents had in common? Pretty simple.
Wartime presidents.
Yeah, wartime presidents. They presided over huge threats, existential crises. You could probably say there's been at least 3, 4 if you count today, existential crises in the history of this country. Certainly the Revolutionary War, certainly the Civil War, and World War II. Maybe the War of 1812, but even that fits in because many of us consider Andrew Jackson to be one of our greatest presidents. He wasn't president during the war, but he was the general that won the Battle of New Orleans and blah, 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 whole historical side thing. But you see the point. And do the presidents have to have some of the inner degrees of character to rise up to the challenge? Of course they do. If this country had a lesser man as president when the Civil War broke out, it would have been the end of the Union. Had we had a weaker president when World War II broke out, we probably would have negotiated peace with the Japanese and Germans, and the world would look very different. So what we have within us matters, but it can only matter as much as the context or scenario or environment allows it to. So those of us that have had difficult lives have been through a lot of darkness. Raise your hand if you've ever been through a lot of darkness. And I'm hoping to see everyone's hand. Yeah, or you can lie, or maybe you've just been really lucky. But I'll just let you know, people with charmed lives don't tend to do this kind of work.
I was just thinking, if person didn't raise their hand here, they wouldn't be here.
You're right. Steve's exactly right. So there is a bias in how the group is selected. People that go deep into self-improvement, those of you here, are here because you've suffered real darkness. There are people who are seminar junkies who just go because they like new agey stuff. That's okay, right? Just like I like going out to games and concerts. So there's nothing wrong with that if that's how you choose to. Yeah,
a lot of feel good stuff in there. You know, it makes you feel good.
Yeah, I took my son to the Clippers game the other night. I was pretty sure they were going to win against the poor Pistons. It was actually a good game for the first 3 quarters. And the Clippers ran away with it. But it was fun. It felt good to go down and cheer and watch your team win, right? But I wasn't expecting it to change my life or make me rich or unlock the secrets to enlightenment. I remember at one of the first teacher training program I did, there was close to 100 people in the room, and the teacher raised her hand and asked, "How many of you feel that you grew up in a dysfunctional home?" It was almost the whole room that raised their hand. Like out of 100 people, there were like 2 that didn't. And they were probably busy picking their nose or something, not paying attention, right? So again, the story is not the enemy. So I hope you see that the stories we've lived through and we've created on the inside are not the enemy, they're actually our ally. All the drama is giving you this opportunity to show who you are, to rise up to the challenge. Because without that, what you do would be meaningless. If Abraham Lincoln had been Abraham Lincoln during a relatively peaceful and easy time to be president, most of us wouldn't even know who he was. So who was president in 1876? Anyone know off the top of their head? Of course not. There was no big crisis then. There's always things happening, right? But we have no idea. And that's the point. So that the story is what's happened. It's how we're reacting to it. It's how we're moving forward. It's not the enemy. And this is why Carl says, here lies your true power. If you're willing to disidentify with the story, then you can see that there is a you that exists without the story. And that's what I loved about Edward's share. That was kind of the point that Deep Space Nine was making. That Sisko was taken out of his regular life and was able to disidentify with living in the drama of being the war survivor, of losing his family, of being a single parent. Because all those things are real. I mean, it's a fictional universe, but if assuming the Star Trek world was real, those things would be real, right? Those things really happen to people. But to let go of it, to disidentify, you realize that you are not that story. Steve, did you have something to share? Please, go ahead.
Oh, where'd I go? Something happened here. Yeah, Brent, I have a share when the appropriate time comes.
Okay. So just to finish up, you recognize the mind, the ego as the source of the story. And you are not the mind or the ego, are you? Right. So we are not our story, though we tend to think we are. Just like Sisko thought he was the guy that lost his wife in the war and had to raise his son on his own. That happened, but that wasn't him. He was simply the witnessing, the awarenessing of those events unfolding. And so you don't need your story to be better or different, you just appear in the moment. And we can have the stories, but not be the stories. They're just phenomena that appear and disappear. And this is the basic teaching of awakening of non-duality, that you are the eternal awareness. Everything in polarity comes and goes. Even our physical bodies, even our lives, they come and go. Our money comes and goes. Our relationships come and go. Our health comes and goes, doesn't it? Yep. Sometimes it comes back, sometimes it doesn't. And this is all meant to be part of the enjoyment of being human. To simply experience and being aware of all these things. But then our mind takes hold of it and gives it meaning, and that's where we get sunk. That's the part we're looking to work on. So Steve, go ahead and share.
Okay, I'm very happy to report that I just had probably the best Christmas I've ever had in my adult life.
Awesome.
And there's a reason for it. It relates to the tools of higher dimensional living, big time. Because as the season was starting, I was sitting there going into my Grinch mode. And, I literally really hated Christmas. I really did. And I hate the month of December. I hated Christmas music. I go into a store that was having Christmas music on. I just couldn't stand it. I'm not overstating it. I'm really not.
1 star on Yelp just for Christmas music.
and I couldn't stand spending all the money on the gifts and stuff either. So as we're getting into the season, I started realizing here it comes again. And I'm going, well, why am I that way? There's got to be a reason why I'm that way. Mm-hmm. So I did a meditation on myself and I asked the Creator, I said, okay, why am I that way? And I got pretty clear insight. It came in and said, I'm holding trauma from Christmas. I'm going, okay, so I must have tested, am I holding trauma from Christmas? And I got a yes. And I said, okay, what Christmas? So I started playing around and it hit me like a ton of bricks. The story was real. I was in Guam just before Christmas in my 6th year of marriage, my first wife, coming back from an extended 6-month rotation over there. And she was in a car wreck while I was coming back. When I got back, she went into a short coma. But when we got back together, when I got back, she told me, she says, I don't know who you are. You're not my husband. I know legally you're my husband, but you're not my husband. And the next morning she packed her bags and left. And this was just a few days before Christmas. Wow. Probably a week or two. And then, I hit deep dark. I went in and talked to the squadron commander and said, hey, I can't fly. I took myself out of flying for a short period of time because of the mental. I just wasn't functioning. And then they decided, after a while, to put me on alert during Christmas because I was single now. And so all the people with families could be, that's what they did back then. Single guys pulled alert over Christmas and the married people got to be with their families. And that combination of stuff was a horrible thing. It really was. And ever since, and I'd been completely blocked that memory. Until I started digging into it. And of course, I did the trauma clearing protocol on the trauma. And there were a couple of side traumas also in there. And I came out of it completely changed human being. And I also did it on Valentine's Day too. And
I probably need to do that.
and also I even did it on anniversaries because I've always been a kind of a Grinch about anniversaries too. And and to prove that it changed me, I yesterday just bought my wife a $1,000 set of earrings for our anniversary tomorrow. And that is not what I would have done prior to this. and I'm happy about it. It's a complete life-changing event. It's probably one of the most significant life-changing events that I've had under this program.
Pretty beautiful, huh?
I'm excited.
So it's a great example of Steve was able to step back from the story, as it says in this article, to just temporarily see what was really happening and then make some adjustments to become more functional. And there's reasons for everything. There's reasons we believe what we do, how we act. There's always reasons for everything. If we can look at it objectively, which is part of the point of the group, right? You say something, you do something, you have the whole group saying, this is what we see. It's a good way of connecting objectively with the feedback to get out of the story. And then the story will tend to start changing and reconfiguring once we're not inside of it. We got to get out of it. I will sometimes say it's hard to clean your sink when it's full of dishes. So we step back, we disassociate, and this is why there's more than one of us here. It's much harder to do for yourself. It's possible. Steve pulled it off in that example. I had a similar drama with New Year's Eve. When I was 7 years old, my grandpa Murray, who was not just a soulmate, but a twin flame to me, were literally the same person. He was the only person in the world that I've felt has ever really understood me. He died suddenly. And I had nothing but shit New Year's Eves for decades. And then I was able to recognize it, like Steve said, do some work on it, and then it changed. So that this is, that when we are to connect to another Carl teaching, when we are at the effect of a story, it's invisible to us. And I love what Steve shared. He didn't even remember it for the longest time. That's to kind of make the point. When we're at the effect of a story, it's invisible to us. We literally often cannot remember what it was that triggered all this. We've blocked it. Those of you that have practiced digging, either in the practice groups or on your own, may have noticed what psychologists call the doorknob disclosure, where you got an hour with someone and you're talking and you're talking and you're trying to find the core. And then as the person is walking out, literally with their hand on the doorknob, they go, oh, to use Steve's story, maybe I hate Christmas because my wife was in a bad car accident and then got up and left me. And of course that happens because as you're walking out the door, it's a safe place to disclose because you don't have time to actually go address it. But that's how we all work. So great share. Who else has something to say about this? If not, Andrew has a bunch of stuff he brought to the party today we can dig into.
I have one other thing.
Yeah, please.
I mean, I'm not going to tell a long story about it or anything.
You can if you want. I don't mind.
But I completely blocked my sexual abuse as a child. Completely blocked it until, well, it's been a few years ago now, but it was after the work that we've been doing. And then it came, all of a sudden I recalled it. And that's just an example how you can block stuff.
Sure. And sometimes even when you're not actively blocking it, you don't see it as a problem. For me, you're going to laugh at me. It wasn't until I started going to Al-Anon in my 30s that I realized it wasn't normal to find your father passed out drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning. I just thought that was normal growing up. Just, oh, dad's drunk again, whatever. Didn't strike me as a big deal. Certainly wasn't something you would talk about. I just figured every dad did that. But it was literally, I was, 34 years old or whatever it was, when I started going to Al-Anon and going, wait a second, maybe that's not normal. So sometimes we totally block it out. Other times it's hidden in plain sight. It's right there, but we don't recognize it. We don't even think to look for it. So it's pretty fascinating how it all works, huh? And of course, even the timing of when we get to release and reveal these myths and stories is encoded by deeper layers of myths and stories, isn't it? The only reason you're all here learning these techniques and processes is because you had belief systems and stories that facilitated you to do that. A lot of the world doesn't have the foundation to get here. That's why they're not here. Pretty simple, right? And it's, back to the entertainment and enjoyment, we want to remember that ultimately life on earth is to create a series of experiences. That's really all there is to it. It's that simple. And there's only one of us here, and it doesn't matter who has the experience. Edward, please, would love to hear from you.
I just want to briefly share my trip back to Taiwan, where I was born. And the reason I came back here, I brought my daughter, is because last year it was 2018. My first wife passed away, and she asked me to take her ashes back to her hometown with her parents who passed away together in a tower. Mm-hmm. And so this year, my daughter didn't come last time, so this time I took her with me to visit that place. The main thing, I can see, coming back to the home country where I grew up, I'm meeting all the people. I can see everybody has a story and run deep in their life. Well, actually, including myself. But the main thing is, this time, my first wife had many sisters, actually 5. And but this, I came back and told 2 of them my new marriage, which they didn't know. And I don't want to hide from them because I know eventually they will know. So this time when I came back, I told them I remarried, and then one of them is very open. She accepted. The other one just like, she doesn't want to see me again. She bursts into like furious and write a very nasty letter to me. But I just so I'm coming back to here. I have to go through all these emotional situation, but at the same time, I kind of like try to put myself in an observer view. This everybody has a story, and these stories run deep in them or in them in me. Now, how am I going to deal with this, or just say, okay, this is what it is. I'm just telling this, and whether you take it, you react it. I'm just being me, and this is the fact. And I just say, I think getting back to the writing today is like, I'm just try to observe in all these emotional moment, how things plays out, and there are actually many other things like my wife's family, except her, are all Buddhists. And so when we go to see my first wife, the ashes and everything, the urn, the tower, they have to perform Buddhist ceremony. In the past, being a Christian, I would say, okay, I will just observe from just being observer. No, I don't participate. But this time, actually, I just participated, burning the incense, going along with them. That would be like a violation to my Christian faith. But now I kind of put down my Christian faith. So there are also all the things going on. But I try to, in a way, like elevate myself in a higher level of conscious to see all these are the things people do. It's a ritual, it's a story. You don't have to be kind of like bound to any one of them. There's a way to.
Edward, I think part of what you saw was the story doesn't mean anything, does it? If you light some incense and bow in front of the Buddha, it doesn't mean you're going to go to hell. It doesn't mean you've pissed off God. That's ridiculous, right? They're just stories.
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone can have their own perspective, and I encourage you to. The way I look at it is, I do not consider myself necessarily a Buddhist or a Christian or a member of any particular faith. I simply see myself who does things from various faiths. So I do Christian things. I do Buddhist things. I do Muslim things. I do Taoist things. But I don't want to be bound by that descriptor of, you are a Buddhist, you are a Christian. It's just one perspective. But great share. And it is that seeing, that realizing, that objective, when we get out of the story and see what's really happening, that's when the healing and progress and growth really happens. And it probably felt good to be part of the ceremony, I would guess. I would guess it did. Thank you. Great share.
Ray, I have a full question.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if possible, can you hear me? Oh.
Well,
okay.
the divine can heal you. We can facilitate a process for that.
Okay, sorry. I just wondered if this one working. About the soul retrieval, if I pronounce correct.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
And can you explain that part more? Because
sure.
what happened in the practice group, Lisa was pointing out, say, oh, you need to finish that one before you're closing. Then I have no clue about what kind of situation that involve for the soul retrieval.
Okay. So soul retrieval is, the concept is this, that when we have powerful, intense emotional experiences, we will tend to chip off and release a bit of our soul energy. And it can get picked up by other people and stuck to them and vice versa. So we can have little chips or bits of other people's soul stuck to us and vice versa. And the soul retrieval is pretty simple. We're simply taking off all of that that is not ours, sending it through the celestial car wash and sending it home, and vice versa. Typically, I use this as part of the relationship protocol. So it's unusual I would do it outside of that. But almost always when I do soul retrieval, it's part of a specific relationship clearing process. Does that help?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And second one, is all of the situation in the lifetime, like trauma, accident, or physical health issue, is all related to subconscious or not necessary?
Generally, yes. Just with a caveat that not everything has lots of dark tentacles and deep roots. Some things happen just because they happen, but yes, ultimately it's all driven by the unconscious. So the subconscious is our code, it's our programs. So we have a program for money, a program for happiness, a program for success, a program for intuition, you name it, right? We got a program for everything. And so those programs manifest in the experiences that they deliver to us, what we call our lives.
Okay.
And is there a subconscious piece to everything? Yes. But not everything goes super deep, right? That sometimes you get sick and miss a few days from work because you really, really need a break and you weren't going to take days off otherwise. Other times you get sick just because you sat next to the wrong person on the bus. And not everything goes super deep. But yeah, everything's created out of the subconscious. It's the code. Just like if you look at your computer, every program on the computer is created by code on the hard drive, loaded into memory, executed by the CPU, right? And so sometimes you have a program you're running because that's what you're doing. Other times you may have started a program 6 weeks ago and it's still there, you just haven't bothered to close it. So a lot of our programming is the same. Not everything is central and super important in the moment. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's just something that's just running and we didn't bother to close.
And the third one is one time, I forgot when you mentioned about, you mentioned about you have some kind of event happen and you somebody call and you answer the phone. At the same time, you mentioned about you are doing the movement while you answer the.
Sure.
Oh, I was like confused. I said.
Yeah. What one thing I'll find is when I'm doing interviews or media, especially doing it remotely on the phone, I like to remember to do some movement during the call or at least before the call.
Oh, okay.
That's
I was
all.
wondering,
Yeah,
you will answer the phone still like.
No. So I would generally try to do some movement when we're doing the call. And if you can't do that, do it right before. So as an example, sometimes I'll, when they have me on KPFK, they like me to go out to the studio, which, it's not a big deal. It's only, 30-minute drive. But I can't really be doing the movement in the studio with Lisa. So I'll get there early and just sit in the waiting area and do some movement right ahead of my call. So do I do that for every single private day-to-day? No. But for big stuff, if you have an important interview, something like that, I would encourage you, absolutely do some movement either right before or during. If you're going to get married, I would encourage you, do some movement right before you go out and get married. It will change your energy. It will change the energy of the experience.
Wow.
So definitely recommend it. And I try to do movement when I do the weekend seminars. I generally try to do some movement either before class or at lunchtime. because it really does make a difference.
And the fourth one is last meeting. I think it's close to the end. You point out that you mentioned about in the past, do the movement. A lot of time people do dancing, but now don't do it. It's
that's simply a matter of technology. The dancing is very difficult in using Zoom. That it's doable, but you would have to make a video of yourself dancing and then play it.
Oh,
it's just difficult with the technology to get a full body view of someone dancing around the room. Really, you would need a camera person there. If you had someone else in the room to hold the camera, it would work better. That's the only reason.
okay.
And Carl didn't do dancing on Zoom sessions either. It just doesn't fit the technology well. But if we all got together in a room, that is one of the things I might have you do. And that was something Carl did at almost all his weekends.
Oh, only me.
Yeah, he just froze.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things Carl did a lot
Hi.
at his weekends is he would have everyone in the room dance, and then he would have some camera person filming it, and then the whole group would sit and watch the video.
Very interesting.
Yep. But again, it doesn't really matter what movement we do. They all reveal the same stuff. It's just, it just keeps it a little more interesting and fun to change it up now and then. Well, that's why I encourage you guys to make up your own movement sometimes. That everything is ultimately made up, right? That before anybody said is, no one had ever said is before. Someone was the first person to use that word, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Good? Awesome. All right, cool.
Real
So,
quick.
yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. Edward, I just wanted to say, while you were sharing, for as long as I guess I've known you since level 4, your energy is the most grounded, and the word large comes to mind.
Peaceful.
Wow.
For what I saw. Yeah, despite the storm blowing on the surface of things, it kind of reminded me of an oak tree that had deep roots.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, you're very peaceful. And it's funny, there is sort of a Buddha nature that's showing up stronger than before. To for lack of a better term, is sort of that peace, the compassion, the groundedness. Absolutely. And what Jake mentions is a great thing. That's kind of what we're aiming for, isn't it? There will be drama. The question is, can we be a lighthouse in the storm? Any Cryon fans in the crowd? I like Cryon. And Cryon talks about being a lighthouse. All the lighthouse does is shine its light. But the lighthouse is largely unaffected by the storm. So it just shines its light. It can't control the weather. It can't make the weather. It just shines its light. And if the storm is severe enough, the light might go out. But we just do the best we can. Very cool. So Andrew submitted a couple things that I wanted to give some attention to. I don't know if we'll have time to get to all of them today, but I know you submitted the movement video, and you submitted a script, and you submitted a dream. So Andrew, you get to pick. Where would you like to start?
Hey, thanks. Let's start with the dream. How's that?
Okay. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have Andrew read the dream to us and give him feedback. And if anybody would like to follow up by reading Andrew's dream to us, let us know. Is that something Carl would sometimes do? First, you'd have the person who had the dream read it and give feedback. Then we have someone else read the same dream. And it's fascinating because you'll see a different person reading the exact same script will often send a different energy.
Does that feedback, if like say I read Andrew's dream, is that feedback then for Andrew or for me?
It's for both.
Okay.
Because remember, there's only one of us here.
Okay.
Doesn't really matter who's in front of the camera, whose dream it is, or any of that.
Interesting.
Yep. But we're all changing, growing together. All right, Andrew, let's hear it.
Okay, so we'll go dream 2 because I had 2, but this one is calling me. So I'm at a prior law firm, and I see a former law clerk there. He moves fast to give me a bear hug, and it hurts my back. I push him off me and decide to leave the law firm. My car and bags are ready to go. I see the law firm partner, who will be known as the boss, in the garage. The boss starts to give me a bear hug, which hurts my back as well. I push him off me. The boss starts to cry on the floor. My back is sore. I get in the car and get out of there fast. The song by the 5 Steps, Ooh Child, plays in the background as chorus music. And the lyrics of the words are, ooh child, things are going to get easier. Ooh child, things will get brighter. And I wake up.
Cool. I got a few things to say, but I want to let the group go first. Anyone have any feedback for Andrew on his dream?
Yes. Back is support, primary, your body support, and back issues can often be supportive life issues. And your dream reads to me very much like that. You're changing the way you're going to support your life. The hurting back, I'm not sure about the interpretation of that. I have to do a reading on that, but that's what I've got so far.
Thank you.
Who else? And remember, it doesn't have to be about the content of the dream. It can also just be about his energy as he's talking. And that's what I'm going to focus on a little more. But I want to give everyone else a chance first.
It's very interesting. Most of the time when you got somebody hug you, you will feel like, oh, it's so nice. But after the hug, it's a hurt. And then second person come out, is another hurt. So it's something related to the hurt rather than say, I give you a hug and I'm not enjoy it.
Oh, it's a great insight. This is a great example of what we might call reverse wiring. That, Andrew, you see how something that normally would be associated with love and connection and support, you found not only painful, but actually debilitating. It injured you. Interesting, huh?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I have a sense that you're rebelling against something that was controlling you or constricting you, perhaps, and that you're kind of longing for an earlier, simpler time, like during the 60s and 70s when they sang those songs. I remember researching that song just a couple of weeks ago, just because I'm trying to play all of those early songs that I heard on my sister's phonograph when I was a child, and it made me feel so free. And I'm playing them on my ukulele. I'm downloading music, and I downloaded that group, and I saw the album where that song came from, and they have the largest afros. I mean, I never envisioned that they were trying to be another Jackson 5, but they were just like huge afros, and beautiful song. I can understand you're probably trying to rebel against the corporate world and wanting to feel freer, maybe finding a sense of innocence.
Andrew, I just have a question or clarification. The place where the dream took place, you said you were in a law firm? Where was it? I didn't get it.
Yeah, no, good question. I didn't really disclose. Yeah, initially I was at a law firm with the law clerk, and then afterwards with the boss, right? It shifted to the garage, which was probably, I'm guessing, I'm using inference here, but it's probably the garage of the law firm, kind of on the way out.
So what kind of law firm was it? It was why were you there in the first place? What kind does this law firm when you are awake, does this law firm feels familiar, or it was a strange place, or some place you went there before?
Yes, it was an immigration law firm, and I previously worked there.
Oh.
Yeah, I got the distinct impression that you were leaving the job at the law firm.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the read I had.
Yes, it was painful for you to be there, so you had to get out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the what I got out of it is, both times that you were hugged, it was like the appearance of, oh, we're sorry to see you go, but your real inner self was feeling there was a lot of undermining and betrayal going on. So on one hand, we're glad to have you here, but the other hand, it was, it wasn't a place that nurtured you when you're leaving the office and then you go out the door, moving on, but then you go into the garage, which is more like a symbolic of being in the womb, and then your boss is there again, appearance of sorry to see you go, but at the same time, the realization that it's not the place for you, so that's the pain. But also looking at you energetically, it's like, on one hand, you have a swirling energy that's from the crown to the base, but as it gets close to your heart, everything narrows down like an hourglass. And so that, there's a lot of disappointment there and, not again, and frustration. But then the music of the song is it's going to get better as you move on, but you got to move on. You're supported, but you got to get out of your story, which is the topic for today. So it all kind of ties together.
Yeah, and the hug itself was a duplicitous thing because you were essentially getting sabotage energy from your coworkers and your boss. It on the surface it was meant to be, hey, you're a great guy, we're sorry to see you leave, but at the same time they were stabbing you in the back while they were hugging you.
Yeah,
it's sabotage type.
Awesome feedback.
Cool.
Thank you all.
Right. So I want to address not the content of the dream, but his energy as he was presenting. And Andrew, I think you'll find this fascinating. What I saw was it was almost like you were telling a tragic story as a means of comedy. Almost like as from a soul level, you decided, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of dumb, klutzy stuff and fall over and get bonked on the head because it'll make me laugh and it'll make everyone around me laugh. So I think there's an aspect of that going on with your life, that you're creating these kind of sort of crazy, weird situations. I'm not sure if it's just to be funny or to try to make people happy. But I noticed as you were going through the dream, it started off a little more serious, and there was an increasing note of sort of comedy in your energy. Almost like you were taking enjoyment and entertainment from the crazy, weird things that were happening. Does that make sense? And this is something I encourage you to watch the recording. I think you'll see it on the recording. And of all the stuff going on, I think that may be the most significant, because it's really not necessary for you to be sacrificing your goals in your life in order to make others laugh or to be comic. That's not necessary, is it? Your life's too important for that. There's plenty of other things we can all laugh at.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For Andrew. Is this a one-time dream or is this a recurring theme dream?
Well, good question. And so consciously one-time dream, but I did have another dream related, but not in terms of the exact content. But energetically, my intuition's actually saying it's probably a recurring energetic thing.
Yeah, the recurring dreams are messages and everything. I mean, I'm agreeing with everything everybody else has said. I'm not having any issues at all, especially with what Brent said. But if there's a recurring theme underlying this dream, even though it's completely different place, setting, and all characters, then you might look at the theme also for digging.
Yeah, as a general rule, we only send messages repeatedly if we think they're not being received. Right? Right. So you don't keep telling one to do something if you know they're going to do it. So I kind of look at dreams the same way. If there's a recurring dream, there's an important message there. No, there's not a coincidence. There's something to discover, learn, explore, work through, whatever, right? And if we were actually listening, we wouldn't need to keep telling them. It's like my son, we tell him, get your pajamas on, RJ. It's getting close to bedtime. And he doesn't do it. Why is it that we have to tell him 20 times a day to put his pajamas on? Because he doesn't do it. If we knew he did it every time, we'd only tell him once. So that's kind of how I look at it. And it's not just dreams, it's everything in life. You know, I think it was Terry that talked about the rule of three. that if something shows up once in your life, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it doesn't mean anything, don't make a big deal of it. If something shows up twice, you might want to start paying attention. If something shows up 3 times, it's crystal clear. This is important. So if one person mentions, hey, you should read this book, okay, that's right, that's nice. If 2 people independently suggest it, it's probably important. You should probably get that book. If it's 3, then go immediately onto Amazon and order it. Is there something in there, there's a reason it showed up 3 times independently, right? And I look back at and it's funny, I mentioned Conversations with God. That's why I bought Conversations with God. I had like 5 or 6 people over the course of a year tell me, Brent, you would love this book, you should read it. And I did. I'm like, oh my God, this is the best book I've ever read.
But it sat under your table, if I recall correctly. It sat under your bookcase table, your table for like a year or more.
Yep.
So, okay, what was the underlying reason for that? What was blocking you from actually picking up the book and reading?
Good question. Short version was, for whatever reason, it just wasn't time yet. Or I didn't make the decision to move ahead in that moment. And it is funny, it sat on my bookshelf for almost a year before I even opened it. And as soon as I started to read it, I literally read it cover to cover. Like I started reading at like 5 in the afternoon, and I kept reading until I finished at like 4 in the morning. I could not put it down. But it is kind of funny, huh? How it sat there for almost a year, never even opened it. Was I supposed to open it then? Evidently, because that's what happened, right? So good share. Anyone else have anything on Andrew's dream? Otherwise, would love to have someone volunteer. Okay, Edward. Andrew, can you cut and paste it into the chat room for Edward?
Yes, let me, bear with me for a second.
And then Edward can just read it out of the chat room. You can either do it publicly or privately, we don't care.
Okay, let me just find it real quick.
Let's see, I'm not seeing anything yet.
Yeah, it's another 10 seconds. Hold on, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Just sent.
Okay, I see it now. Okay. Dream 2. I'm at a prior immigration law firm and I see a former law clerk there. He moves fast to give me a bear hug and it hurts my back. I push him off me and decide that to leave the law firm. My car and bags are ready to go. I see the law firm partner, the boss, in the garage. The boss starts to give me a bear hug, which hurts my back as well. I push him off me. The boss starts crying on the floor. My back is sore. I get in the car and get out of there fast. The song, Ooh Child, by the Five Stairsteps plays in the background as chorus music. The lyrics heard are these words. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will get brighter. And I wake up.
May I give some feedback?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so first, the tone in which you read the lyrics was exactly like the dream.
Wow.
Calming, soothing, and vibrationally accurate, completely.
Wow.
And the sadness in the voice and the experience was definitely felt.
Wow.
Pretty weird how that works, huh?
this time, second time reading the dream, my attention actually at the push away. The person that hurt you, it push away. The second time, the emphasis on the push away. It's like, I'm gonna get out of here. That's the second time.
No, it's an excellent point. You'll notice that different people reading the same script emphasize and pace it differently, don't they? We actually get different things out of it based on how they present.
Yeah, I got what Nipar said. Also, you know, that I got to get out of here fast. I got push them away. All that was much more emphasized.
Yeah.
In this reading.
Yeah. What I would like to add is like when Andrew presented his dream, I didn't hear clearly, but when Edward said it, I can hear very clearly. But there is some. So this actually for me is that even Andrew tried to share dream. There's some reluctance. There's something hindering the this message going through. So as a receiver, I didn't get clearly. But when Edward said it, somehow that reluctance is not there. He's really more like a third person. It's not his story, and so he can share it without any, shall we say, attachment. And somehow I can get that message more clearly.
Yeah, Andrew, you were a little self-conscious, and it's funny. I noticed the same thing when Andrew read the dream. The song lyrics didn't come across as clearly to me as they did with Edward. That I really heard it more clearly. One thing I think was interesting about Edward's reading was big picture. Andrew's reading was more comedic. Edward's reading was more dramatic.
Yeah, I didn't, in the first reading, I didn't get the boss falling on the floor crying at all. I missed that completely.
Yeah, there's things we miss. I also noticed that when Edward was reading, he started off very disconnected from the dream, but as he was going through, he got more and more connected, to where at the end he was very connected with the song lyrics and that. There was a strong connection. But it started off as kind of him sitting back and kind of like reading a sign in the distance. You know, just very disconnected from it. And then you slowly got closer and closer and closer, and boom. Towards the end, you were very, very connected to the story. And we could hear very clearly. I thought it was interesting. The second time, I heard the song lyrics much more clearly. And it was interesting how the dream went that things are going to get better, things are going to get better. And then I woke up. I don't think that's a coincidence. So, you know, we use that term awakening, that word is chosen carefully. It's the closest analog in our physical lives to what's happening mentally and spiritually.
Yeah, that's powerful. Definitely. That's cool.
And my guess, Andrew, is you probably didn't see that till I just mentioned it.
Not at all. Yeah. Completely asleep.
And that's why we do this, right? There's so much value and meaning that's right there all the time, but this is that hidden in plain sight thing I mentioned. Something is right there, but we don't recognize it. Or we see it, but we don't think it's any significance or importance. But I thought that was really fascinating, huh?
Yeah. Andrew, it's okay you send that text to me. I just feel that the way you describe the whole thing is like very poetic. And then with Brent's comment, it becomes philosophical. Mm-hmm. It's a really great thing. It's, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
I just sent it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Andrew submitted a couple other things, but I don't want to let one person monopolize the whole second half of the session. If there's anyone else that wants to share, do movement, ask for support, you're welcome to. Yeah. If not, we'll circle back to more of Andrew's stuff. Edward, go ahead.
I want to do movement around this theme you and I discussed before about this archetype I've been living with for a while, of the wounded avenger that seems to have, someone that can oppose me or limit, the good that I can have. And so just getting rid of this whole thing that somebody can limit me. And then, of course, since I feel wounded, I hold a grudge and, that whole thing. And I stay focused on. And again, the theme today is perfect to address that instead of being in the woundedness and saying, okay, and in my workplace, I have somebody that's trying to limit what I can make. And of course, I've worked around that, but still, I notice how I'll grind on it and versus just moving beyond it.
Okay. Let me offer this. When
Okay.
you're doing the movement, don't worry about any of that.
Right.
A lot of head stuff, you're correct. It's correct and proper. It's just going to be distracting. So when we do the movement, you just want to be present to the moment and move.
Right.
There's no particular agenda or goal.
Right.
Cool. And that ultimately is how we shake off the dysfunctional myths. Just be you. So it's interesting. The first thing you show us is your weakness. And it's actually getting a little stronger, more connected. But Edward, when you started, it was really weak and disconnected, almost dysfunctional. Like
Disabled
you were,
was the
yeah,
word I heard.
disabled, lame, crippled. I'm not sure which of those words are no longer politically correct, but something like that.
It's like playing small, kind of.
Yeah, not just playing small, but playing injured too.
Mhm.
Weak, hurt, sick. And it's, you know, it certainly over the first minute got more coherent. But Edward, that was the first thing you showed us, was you showed us your weakness, your pain, your injury, your limitation.
I'm seeing futility.
Yeah, I'm seeing a similar, I would say there's a lot of efforting. There's a lot of work and effort going into creating, not a lot coming out the other side.
Yeah, I heard the word difficult manifesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm getting he's trying to scoop things in, but they're slipping between his fingers.
Yeah, that's good. I want to look at that a little bit.
I feel I feel he hold his breath. It's very shallow.
Yeah, you are holding your breath, aren't you?
You know, his fingers look like claws. It's kind of like he's scrabbling for something.
Yeah, especially the right arm.
It's a little puppy that fell in the pool. He's trying to get out.
Yeah, your right hand, it's almost like it has a weapon in it. That it's a little dangerous or something.
I feel the fight.
Yeah, when you said fight, Edward, your eyes lit up. I don't know if you could feel that. So yeah. I think part of you is attracted. I don't know if you're afraid of the fight or drawn towards it. What would you say?
I'm drawn towards it.
That's what I would guess. I'm the same way. Most people draw away from conflict. There's a minority of us that are drawn to it like a moth.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm just saying that's how it is.
No, that's true. If there's any kind of fight or battle, or whether it's intellectual or gladiator, or there's about to be some engagement,
yes,
lights up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, and you probably enjoy competition.
Yep.
Yeah, you like to play games and engage in competitive behaviors.
Oh yeah.
It's not a bad thing. It's just if overdone, it can cause problems.
Right.
It seems very compressed.
Yeah,
very
there is some compression.
Tight.
Edward, were you bullied as a kid?
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm seeing in the energy. This is someone who's been bullied.
I was a very skinny kid.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in the energy. One is the compression, like Steve mentioned. You're trying to keep it small. And remember, the first thing you showed us was your weakness, your pain, your injury. That's very common if you've been bullied, because that's one of the ways you'll avoid getting more hurt. If you show you're already hurt, you're hopeful they'll show you some mercy. We also saw in your eyes when there was a mention, I think from Grace, of fight. I saw you just light up, like, oh yeah, bring it on. So simultaneously, you're trying to keep yourself small and non-threatening, but when there's an opportunity to challenge, to compete, to fight, you're just all on top of that. Okay, we're seeing a little different energy here. There's a little better connection. It's starting to be a little generative.
And
He's
his
starting.
fingers are straighter and not as
Yeah.
crabby.
You're starting. It looks like you're making something. You're like someone folding paper, making origami, or using their hands, building something.
They're rolling up a ball of yarn.
Mm-hmm. It's like a productive, creative kind of energy.
I saw somebody enjoying baking, like tossing dough.
Sure. Yeah, baking. No, that's a creative, productive endeavor for sure.
And he's opening his elbows out.
Yeah.
The compression is loosening up.
You'll notice in the last minute or two, he started to give back. That the giving, he's much more powerful and generous in terms of how he's offering and giving. And there's more of a flow to the in and the out. You can see that he's starting to bring in and give out. It's getting more balanced in that sense. And the arms will naturally get a little bigger as the energy opens up. But don't worry about the physical stuff too much. We want to focus on the energy it's projecting.
A lot of strength.
Yeah, there's a lot of strength. The one piece I'm still seeing here that I think we can make some shift in, can everyone see how he's kind of disassociating from what he's doing? He's kind of holding back. He's kind of leaning back. It's kind of, I'm doing my thing over here. Look at what I'm doing, but don't look at me. It's like a self-consciousness. Again, it could be connected to being bullied. You don't want to be excel too much. You don't want to make yourself a target. In Australia, they call it tall poppy syndrome. And it's interesting. You're exploring the feminine a little more here. There's a little more daintiness, gentleness.
Like you were typing a letter for a little bit.
Yeah. It was like you were doing something highly skilled with your fingers, like typing or knitting or something like that.
Writing a letter to the editor.
Getting the feeling of integrating different aspects of himself. He's like searching, he's finding.
Yeah. Now you're moving more into your full power. I'm sure everyone can see his movement looks a lot more powerful, a lot stronger.
Yeah, and his head seems more attached too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more integrated, I would say.
It's interesting you mentioned, Edward, that you were a really skinny kid, because what we're seeing here is I think you're a little self-conscious about your size, and you're now these last couple of minutes you're starting to be more comfortable with your full size. You're getting more comfortable with being big. At the beginning, you were trying to make yourself look smaller, almost like it was your role to show up as the skinny kid.
Interesting.
There you go. When you said interesting, your movement got even bigger. Anyone notice that? You dropped in and connected with the divine masculine, that grounded power. And you can see how he's really connecting to the earth on the way down now.
Yeah, there's an awful lot more power in his strokes there.
Yeah, and does everyone see the difference in his consciousness about his size? He's much more okay with being bigger here. You're not trying to make yourself look small.
I did not see that myself until you mentioned it, but once you did, it's very obvious.
I'm hearing Maverick and like creator.
Yeah, there's what I'm seeing is the energy of someone who's very creative and generative. That this is someone who has a great ability to create things, to make things that are valuable and real. And you also notice there's still some efforting, but it's a lot less than it was at the beginning. This movement is physically much bigger and more demanding on the body than how he started, but it looks like it's less tiring. There's a little bit. It's not effortless. but it's like he's not concerned about getting tired. Good. Go ahead and relax for a second, Edward. What were you feeling, experiencing, going through that?
Much more settling in. Much more settling in, more embodiment, more rhythm. Just a lot of power.
Good.
And expansion.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you need to move ahead in your career. You need to really get bigger, be unafraid of that power, to expand and really show what you can do. Because I really did see the energy of someone who can really create and build and make powerful, valuable things. And if you can project that in a way people can see, they'll want to reward that, right?
True, quite true.
Isn't that the whole point of most companies, is to make something valuable or powerful that people will want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're a software engineer, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, we did see a little bit of the feminine, because there's definitely a strong feminine component to software engineering. There's a lot of things that are very subtle, very intuitive, and there's a certain aesthetic to it.
Right.
So if you're not into software engineering, you may not get that. But there's a certain beauty and elegance to great code.
Right. Great designs and
yes.
Putting things together in a very
That's right.
way. Yeah.
Right. It's a lot more than just ones and zeros stacked up.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing the two, which is a great combination. Very cool. How do you feel, Edward?
No, I feel very energized, wide awake.
Good. Yeah, funny how that works, huh?
Yeah.
Very cool.
And his last movement is like grab the energy from here and go down. I feel he's so grounding, and I feel like he's manifested all the thought form to the real world. And manifest, manifest, and manifest.
Yeah, and that's actually a great description of what software engineering is. You reach up into this vast possibility, right? And take one specific thing and make it real. Because imagine all the possibilities for code. It's nearly infinite. And we're reaching and taking one very specific sequence of ones and zeros and making it a reality to experience it. It's very cool.
For me, it seems the whole thing is like a journey, starting from small to big.
It was.
From powerless to powerful. It's really, I can see the change. It's really
and that's been your life, huh, Edward? You started off small and powerless and picked on, and then you learned how to become big and powerful and make a difference. To really be someone. Cool. Anyone else want to go? Otherwise, we'll do Andrew's video. Up to you guys. Okay, video it is. Let's see. Does anyone know offhand how to insert a video into Zoom?
It's share.
Let's share, okay. Files. Okay, you know what? Let me start his video in a window, and I think I can share that window. All right, there we go. Share. Why is it not showing the media window? Okay, I will try the portion of screen since the doesn't seem to want to share the video. I'll try a portion of screen here.
Sorry guys, I have to go. Happy New Year. See you guys next time.
I agree.
There it is.
All right, you got it? All right, let's see it.
Yes.
So the first thing I noticed, does anyone see the fear he comes in with? There's a lot of fear. I don't know if it's self-consciousness or fear of judgment. But this is a good still here because we can see this combination in Andrew. You can see his determination and power, can't you? But you also see the fear. So I see both running at the same time. That there's a confidence and a grounding, but also a little bit of terror. So we got both mixed up here. It's very interesting. What I see in Andrew's hands is a lot of skill and competence. You'll see the hands are very fluid. They're really connecting to the quantum field. So there's a lot of ability, a lot of knowledge, skill, competence that you can see. At the same time, it's disconnected and being run from the mind. So I'm going to see if I can see where the break is here. Yeah, I see the break in the upper arms, which is very common. You'll see that there's an energy disconnect. The head and the shoulders and the neck are kind of one piece, and the forearms and the hands are kind of their own pieces. But they're not connected together. There's a break in the upper arm. And you can hear a little bit of that slapping sound. That's a good thing for the most part. What that means is his hands are fluid and flexible enough that they're really shaking in a big range, and that's what creates that. So more evidence, there's a lot of competence and skill here, but it's locked up in the hands. And you can see how his hands are really very fluid and very, very blurry. I mean, big picture, what I'm seeing is someone with a high degree of success and ability who's terrified of showing it to the world. There's a lot of fear of judgment, even though what's being shown is actually quite elegant. So it's operating at a very high level. It's unusual to see someone who hasn't done this for years with hands that are so blurry and moving so freely. So there's a lot of skill, a lot of power, but there's a lot of terror about being seen, about being judged. It's almost like you broke into your parents' bedroom and stole something valuable and got caught with it. It's like, oh God, am I supposed to have this? Well, I'll run it again once through without interruption for everyone. The last thing I'll say before I'd love to hear from some other people. It's interesting, you're sending us these interesting mixed signals, Andrew, that you're showing us a combination of defiant and compliant is kind of flipping between the two. And I'm seeing this mostly through your eyes and your head. Sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm strong, don't mess with me, that defiance. And then it flips into, oh God, please don't hurt me, I'll do whatever you want, the compliant. So I'm just kind of choosing those words kind of randomly, but it's that flipping back and forth. That sometimes you're defiant, sometimes you're compliant. And I'm wondering if that mixed signals may be causing some of the stuff that's going on in your life. That on one hand, you're saying, I am strong. On the other hand, you're saying, I'm weak, I'll do whatever you want. And that may be confusing to some people. Who else has some thoughts? And if anyone has requests for me to play a portion here or there, just feel free.
I noticed that throughout the whole time, Andrew has his mouth open because I can see his teeth. So I just want to, Andrew, be aware that next time, are you breathing through your mouth or breathing through your nose? If you are breathing through your mouth most of the time, maybe try to be conscious, close your mouth and feel what it feel like when you breathe through your nose. That's just my observation.
Thank you.
This is a screen grab. This is a pretty good defiant. Everyone see that? I want to see if I can grab a compliant. There's more of a compliant, huh? Andrew, do you see the difference?
Yeah.
It's not wrong or bad. It's just fascinating that you're kind of flipping back and forth between the two. And interestingly, I think with dating, this is not a bad thing. They call it the push-pull. That sometimes you want to send the signal that you're interested, sometimes you want to send the signal that you're not. You want to keep them guessing. Keep yourself mysterious, a little uncertain. Because if you're too clear in your interest, he, she will not be interested in you. If you're really too much disinterested, apathetic, uncaring, that also will drive people away. So the push-pull has a place. I would be a little concerned about the career, especially as a lawyer. You don't want to be sending that compliance signal to your clients or to the other attorneys you're working with, or they're going to eat you alive. Does that make sense?
That's completely helpful. Yes. Yeah. And it connects to the dream.
Yeah. Others have comments, feedback? Feel free to ask me to replay a section. We can go fast forward. We can go slow motion, I think, or not. Depends on how long it takes me to figure this stuff out.
So I noticed you started really tentative, and then, I don't know, maybe about the quarter of the way in, I just felt a really strong connection to the heart. And it felt like he just like sunk in deep. And I mean, I don't know if it's the field, but there's like a moment where he just like sinks and
yeah,
everything
let's see if we can catch
comes
that
together.
I'm going to replay it. Nick, call it out when you see it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So that there is sort of a complacent, a little afraid, and you get more powerful as we move through.
Right about there.
Yeah, it's right in there.
He just kind of like sinks in and like settles into it.
You'll see there's a little head motion. It looks kind of like this, your head going forward. That kind of happens when you drop in and find your masculine power. See if we can call it out. There, did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Then you notice how you got a little more grounded, Andrew? It's interesting. Now, I want everyone to know, doing that head movement is not going to make you grounded. It doesn't work that way. It's a reaction to a symptom of it.
You know what it reminds me of? Have you ever seen, you know, at a racetrack with the horses? There's some horses before they go into battle.
Yeah.
They just have like a head nod.
Yep.
And it's like this energy of like, it doesn't matter who they're going up against, they're going to win.
Right.
And they know it. It
yeah.
reminds me of that.
Yeah, you see that in great athletes too. I went to a Lakers game a few months ago, and I saw that clearly in LeBron James. Even during warm-ups. He's been in the league almost 20 years, right? The guy is still there, just has all this energy, just this belief that I will win, I will beat you, I'm the best, I am awesome. in a confident way, not in an arrogant way. And you could see them almost like spoiling for the race. I think that's what they call it, spoiling for the race. But yeah, I know what you're talking about with the horses. They kind of do this thing, and they're just that's them saying, "I'm ready to run, and I don't care who I'm up against. I'm going to go and I'm going to run. And maybe I win, maybe I won't, but I believe in myself." And then there's another one just a little bit later. There was a little one there. There's more of a nod.
Yeah.
And you can see how it moved you more into the defiant, the energetic. See, that's more of a defiant, huh? If we go back to the beginning, that's much more compliant, isn't it?
And feminine, maybe?
Yeah, it's a little more feminine. And again, they're both powerful. They're both important. It's just a matter of bringing the right energy to the right circumstance. And unfortunately, in the legal world, there's not a lot of room for the feminine. There's some. But it is a primarily masculine energy of the legal world. Because let's face it, it comes down to trials. That's essentially a ritualized combat, isn't it?
Definitely.
That in the old days, people had literal physical combats to settle disputes.
You're making me think of Aaron Burr with the dualism.
Yeah. I mean, heck, go back in our country, people were still dueling and killing each other to settle disputes, matters of honor. And we have evolved somewhat, and instead of a physical fight where someone gets hurt or dies, we move it into a courtroom where instead of physical injury or death, it's now financial injury or death. But I guess that's moving in the right direction, right? If you lose $1 million, you can always make it back. If someone cuts off your arm, you're kind of have a problem. We don't have a complete remedy for that yet. Interesting. Anyone else have comments, shares? I'm going to play something again, not play something again?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the masculine feminine balance and how it relates to kind of our lives when we go into the workplace, like you said, or when we're going into a date, or when we're going into any kind of situation where we feel, there will be some sort of challenge or some sort of scenario that's supposed to play out. Yeah. And how much choice we have in deciding what we bring to the table, how much is told by the subconscious stories. And maybe there's some type of preparation we can do to help get ourselves centered before certain scenarios.
No, that's a great insight. Let me offer a couple comments. One is that generally, there's a saying in Budo that the winner or loser of the fight is decided before it even begins. And so for the most part, when it comes time to be present in life, the most important thing is to be present. Right? Just to use a sports metaphor, when you're shooting free throws in the game, don't think about your technique. Just be present and take the shot. The time for working on the technique is before the game. Make sense? So I'm sure Nick and a lot of us have a tendency to get lost in our head too much. So when you're actually doing something, when you're on the date, when you're in the interview, try not to think too much about, oh God, what do I say or what do I do? Just be present. That's what's. So
do you say to yourself in that moment, I am prepared? Do you give yourself those affirmations?
Sure. If you're going to do one thing, I would say send yourself some unconditional love and do a little movement right before. I think if you're going to do something ahead of time, that would be it. But I wouldn't overdo it because all the preparation is finished before the moment begins. Right? At that point, it's too late to prepare. So, just to use the Budo example, once someone draws their sword and attacks you, you're not thinking about your training or the angles or any of that. You're just fighting. You trust that all the training you put in ahead of time has prepared you for that fight. And that's how I would look at a job interview, a date, that you do the hard work ahead of time to get ready for it, right? That's exactly what we're doing right now in this session, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is our training. This is our preparation. We're getting ready. We're training. We're developing. Once the actual event starts, drop that, because that'll just put you in your mind. And trust that trust the training and preparation you've done is the right thing, because that's what you've done. And that it will lead to the right result, even if it's not the one you were expecting or hoping for. But long story short, don't worry about it when you're on the date. Enjoy the date. Have fun. Don't worry about what you're going to say or how you're standing, or if you're going to go for the kiss or ask for another number. That will happen automatically on its own, and it's better that way. But ahead of time, you put in the work and the time. The British Special Forces have a saying. They say, train hard, fight easy.
Brent, can I give a little feedback to that?
Yeah,
That's
please.
really, really good feedback. So I was at this party, and I was supposed to meet this girl, right? And long story short, I was present, and she was completely giving me like the no sign.
Mm-hmm.
So there was this other woman there. So I got her number, and I asked the lady's mom for a paper because I didn't have my phone on me. And once I got the number, the mom told the girl, and then then the other girl became interested, but initially she wasn't. And I was just like, okay, reading the sign, right? I didn't give a shit. I mean, like whatever.
Yeah, that's right. And just in terms of dating, that's one of the things I learned from my dating coach. Don't immediately go talk to the woman you're most interested in. Go talk to some other people, talk to some guys, talk to some couples, whatever. Talk to the waitstaff, talk to the bartender. Just get in that energy of being social and friendly and having fun. The one you like will notice that, and that will make her want you to talk to her. Make sense? But part of it's also surrender. You have your idea of who you like, who you're interested in. It may turn out that someone else is a much better match for you.
So true.
And, so there's a bit of surrender that goes on too. So have your goal, move towards it, but be open. And I think, go ahead, please.
Just a suggestion for Andrew. I like what you describe, the horse before the race, and some just not. And it said, you can develop a ritual like this, like kind of prep yourself, become powerful, and some powerful power pose. Do something like, and then shoot a video of what like this. See how it show up, the power, the inner power. I'll do that for myself too.
That'd be awesome. When I was in school, I always spoiled before a test. I'm a little weird. Some of you may want to beat me up. I like taking tests because tests were interesting. They were engaging. They're challenging, much more interesting than sitting through another boring class. And a test was an opportunity to show my mastery of the material. So I love taking tests, and I would be looking forward to it. I'd be chomping at the bit. And that tends to produce high performance. So if you're going on a date, just look at it as, hey, this will be fun. I'm going to have a lot of fun tonight. She may not like me, I may not like her. That doesn't matter. We can't control that. I'm going to go out there and be a great man, a great woman, and have a good time. And that's the attitude that'll bring you in. And just to circle back to what we said before, if you're in a situation where you can do some movement during your process, that's not a bad thing as long as it doesn't distract you. So the hips is a good one when you're doing a radio interview. So stand up, move your hips as you're talking. Real simple. If you haven't practiced the hips enough, don't do it, because thinking about it will distract you from being present, and that will cause more harm than good. But if you practiced it enough that it can become largely unconscious, it will be a benefit. And it was actually one of Carl's other students who had mentioned, oh my gosh, I got on the radio and I raised all this money for the station because I was doing the hip movement while I was talking. And I was like, hey, that's smart. Fast forward a year later, I was on KPFK for the first time and doing some hip movement, and I got a huge response. My first telesummit interview, I was doing the hips. I was their #1 bestseller, made $30,000 an hour. So, it does help. But if you can't do it during, do it before. But the most important thing is just be present. You know,
So maybe that was the key to Elvis's success, huh?
I think I don't think it's a coincidence. Obviously, he had tremendous talent. He was in the right place at the right time with the right look, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, historically, Elvis is fascinating. He put a white face on black music, is how I would summarize it.
Mm-hmm.
And mainstream America was not ready for black music, but you put a white face on it, and they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really when blues turned into rock and roll and created, you know, decades of incredible music.
Right.
But yes, I've thought that too, Bill, that the way Elvis could move those hips, that really did increase his energy and presence and charisma. That really did help propel him to popularity and stardom. I don't think that's a coincidence. Anyone else want to share? Otherwise, we'll wrap up for today.
I'm thinking about something you said earlier at the beginning. You talk about, you know, the New Age myth of being able to clear all your negative emotions when that's not even desirable, because we need them. But just to use them in appropriate moments,
right?
And being control of them. Well, I was thinking back to the David Hawkins scale, you know, where you have fear, and then you have desire, and then you have anger.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have anger, then you wouldn't get up off your butt.
That's right.
To go do the goal that you want to do and be proud about it, because that's the
right.
next level, is to be proud about what you achieve.
Yeah.
And I see this, you said, talking about the masculine and feminine kind of fluctuation when you're doing the dance. Maybe the masculine is getting angry at your wimpy self for being afraid, and just say, hey, sit down. I'm going to go talk to this woman.
Yeah,
now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't want to clear all emotions. You just want to clear those that are causing problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That particular trapped, what, you know, and some people call trapped emotions, not the emotion itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something that's causing you to go out of balance.
But really, isn't anger at yourself for being lazy one of the major uses for
absolutely
taking action?
That is absolutely.
And you don't even have to show other people your anger.
That's right. Anger can be enormously important.
Mm-hmm.
Anger gets us to take action, to stand up from ourselves, to go out of our comfort zone, to do things we wouldn't normally do.
Or if you see injustice,
sure,
you want to do something, make it better for someone.
Of course.
Yeah.
They're all important. There's no waste in nature. Where we're given every emotion, every experience has an important use. It's just, are we using it inappropriately, right? A lot of us are trying to use a saw to pound in a nail. It just doesn't work very well. When you were pounding in nails an hour ago and you had a hammer, that's great. Now you're trying to use a saw, it doesn't work. And that's what happens in childhood, whatever, we develop these patterns of behavior and ways of being that are functional for that situation, at least functional enough to survive. Because ultimately, that's all nature cares about, isn't it? Nature wants you to survive long enough to reproduce. And so it works when you're little, but here we are 20, 30, 50 years later, and it doesn't work so well. So maybe we should take a different attitude, right? Take a different approach. But absolutely. So a big round of applause to Andrew for doing homework and bringing it to the group. Yay! I love it when people do homework. And I'll just leave it as an open invitation. If anyone wants to make a movement video, wants to write a dream script, or share the script for their life, you are certainly more than welcome and encouraged to do so.
Just as a point of interest, my sister asked me to write a story of my life to share with her kids, because they don't know. She wants our family history told from another point of view than hers.
Well then, that's remember I talked about 1, 2, 3. That's number 2, Bill, isn't it? Because I've asked you all to do it if you want.
Right.
And now your sister asked you to do the same thing, so I would pay attention to that.
It's synchronicity.
Yeah.
I was looking through some files here today, and I found where I started Life Story, and I think it was from one of the AIs several years ago. I want to take a look at that. Maybe I should work on it some more. I think I'd have a different perspective toward it now.
Yeah.
It might be very helpful to look at that.
Absolutely. It'll give you an idea of where you were. And you have a choice. You can junk it and make a new one, or you can work with it, edit it, fill it out.
Yeah, I think I'm going to open that here in a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Useful.
thanks so much, guys. I really am glad to have been here.
Awesome. Great way to
Thank
start
you
the new
all.
Thank you,
year.
Sherry.
Thank you
We'll
all.
see you all very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Happy New Year. Bye.
Happy New Year.